On this 2019 to 2025 Ram 1500 DT with the 3.6 Pentastar P0141 is an O2 sensor 1/2 heater performance code. In plain terms, the PCM may be commanding the oxygen sensor heater and seeing that the heater response does not match what it expects. The MIL may be on, and the truck may not have an obvious drivability complaint. The possible fault areas are the sensor heater itself, the heater control circuit, the ground side, connector or terminal problems, and only after the circuit checks pass, a possible PCM concern. Start with the basic system checks, then follow a structured diagnostic approach instead of clearing the code and guessing. Before testing, keep the monitor gates separate from the failure decision. This monitor runs with the engine running battery voltage between 11.0 and 15.75 volts, no ambient air temperature sensor fault set, and the required temperature gates met. Those gates include engine coolant temperature at startup above 7 degrees C 44.6 degrees F, ambient temperature above 7 degrees C 44.6 degrees F, the coolant to ambient difference greater than 9 degrees C 16.2 degrees F, at engine start, or O2 sensor heater temperature greater than 401 degrees C 753.8 degrees F for more than 20.0 seconds. The code sets when the PCM sees the actual heater resistance or temperature not matching the target, with O2 sensor heater duty cycle above 89.8% for 90.0 seconds. First, prove whether the condition is active. Turn the ignition off and wait a minimum of 8 minutes so the sensor can cool down. Turn the ignition on. Use the scan tool to actuate the oxygen sensor 1/2 heater control and monitor the O2 sensor 1/2 voltage for at least 2 minutes. The sensor voltage should stabilize between 2.47 and 2.52 volts, and the decision point is whether the voltage stays above approximately 4.5 volts. If it does, continue the diagnostic path. If it does not, treat it as an intermittent condition and do not force the rest of the circuit test to give you an answer it cannot give. Next, check for other O2 sensor heater circuit codes that are active or pending. Record what is there. If another heater circuit fault is present, diagnose the applicable fault first. If there are no other active or pending O2 sensor heater circuit faults, stay on the P0141 path and move to the heater element test. Turn the ignition off and give the O2 sensor heater a few minutes to cool after the scan tool heater test. Disconnect the O2 sensor 1/2 harness connector. Measure heater element resistance on the component side between the O2 heater control terminal and the heater ground terminal. When possible, take the heater resistance reading at approximately 20 degrees C, 68 degrees F. Then use the temperature to resistance chart for the decision. The chart gives 0 degrees C 32 degrees F at 3.142 ohms, 20 degrees C 68 degrees F at 3.344 ohms, and 100 degrees C 212 degrees F at 3.855 ohms. The maximum allowable resistance is 12.5 ohms at 1000 degrees C. If the sensor resistance is in the acceptable range, move on to circuit load testing. If it is not in range, verify good pentaterminal contact at the sensor and control module connectors. If no connector problem is found, replace the O2 sensor, then verify the repair. Now isolate and load test the O2 sensor 1/2K299 heater control circuit for an open or high resistance. The ignition must be off for a circuit load test. Disconnect the ECU and every component connector that contains the circuit being tested, and do not load test any circuit with components still connected. Do not load test airbag or restraint system components or circuits. Also, do not probe PCM harness connectors directly. Use the proper GPEC diagnostic adapter when access at a PCM connector is necessary. A 3156 bulb has approximately 6.0 ohms of resistance when powered and draws approximately 2.0 amps. A 12-volt test light can be used only if it draws enough current to load the circuit. Many high-impedance test lights draw less than 0. 1 amps, and a proper load test tool should draw more than approximately 0.75 amps. The reason for using a real load is simple. 0 ohms of resistance in the circuit being tested can make the voltage measurement across the bulb 25% less than battery voltage, because that 0 ohms becomes 25% of the total circuit resistance of 0 ohms. Connect the load test tool through the isolated K299 circuit and compare bulb brightness to a direct battery connection. If the bulb is illuminated and bright, continue. If it is not, repair the circuit for an open or high resistance, then verify the repair. Next, use the same isolated load test approach on the Z933 ground circuit. Keep the ignition off, keep the circuit isolated from the ECU and connected components, and make sure there is no continuity between ground and the circuit being tested where that applies to the circuit check. If the load test bulb is illuminated and bright, continue to the harness and connector inspection. If the bulb is not bright, repair the ground circuit for an open or high resistance, then verify the repair. If you are using the GPEC diagnostic adapter, remember it can add up to 1.5 ohms of resistance to the circuit. If the sensor resistance and both load tests pass, inspect the related harness connections. Disconnect the PCM harness connectors, any related inline connectors if equipped, and the related component connectors. Look for connector installation problems, damaged locks, corrosion, signs of water intrusion, damaged weather seals, bent terminals, overheating from a poor connection, terminals pushed back in the cavity, spread terminals, and poor terminal tension. Repair anything you find. Then reconnect the PCM connectors, inline connectors if equipped, and component connectors, making sure everything is fully seated and locked. Erase the DTCs, then test drive or operate the vehicle under the monitored and set conditions. If P0141 returns after all of that, replace and program the PCM using the proper programming process, then verify the repair. If the code does not return, the wiring or poor connection problem has been repaired, and you still finish with verification. Keep verification separate from the category testing. After any sensor, circuit, connector, or PCM repair, run the powertrain verification test and confirm the code stays gone under the proper operating conditions. The takeaway is simple. For P0141, prove the heater response is active, check for other heater faults, measure the heater element, load the control and ground circuits, inspect connections, and only make the PCM call after the wiring and connection checks have passed. For more diagnostic training, visit stepdiagnostics.com.